What if Luffy was Inu-sama? Welcome to our channel, The Founding Family. We hope you enjoy this one. And we also hope you can enjoy all of our other videos as well. Well, that's it from us, and we hope to see all of you in the next one, and away we go. High above the world, beyond the reach of pirates and kings, stood the sacred land of Mary Geois. It was a place untouched by war, where power did not need to be proven because it had already been decided. To the people below, it was a myth. To those who lived within it, it was proof that they were above all others. This was where the gods resided. And this was where Monkey D. Luffy was born. From the outside, Luffy's life should have been absolute perfection. He was a celestial dragon, one of the chosen few who ruled the world without question. Servants bowed before him. Guards obeyed without hesitation. Every need was met before he could even speak it aloud. But beneath that untouchable life, something was wrong. Luffy did not feel like a god. He did not feel superior. If anything, he felt out of place. While the other nobles laughed as slaves were dragged through the streets, Luffy watched in silence. While they spoke of humans as lesser beings, he found himself staring at them, wondering what it felt like to live freely. There was a gap between him and the world he had been born into, one he could not explain. It showed in small ways at first. He asked questions. Why do they bow? Why can't they leave? Why does everyone look afraid? The answers never came. Servants avoided his gaze. Nobles dismissed him. The questions themselves became something unwelcome, something that did not belong in Mary Geois. But the feeling remained. A quiet sense that something beneath everything was hidden. Waiting. It began as a presence he could not name. At night, when the halls fell silent and even the guards seemed distant, Luffy would feel it. Not a sound, not a voice, but something deeper. A pull, faint at first, like a memory he had never lived. He would wake with his heart racing, eyes fixed on the ceiling, certain that something had been watching him. Not from above. From below. Years passed, and the feeling only grew stronger. It followed him through the golden halls, through the empty gardens, through every forced smile and meaningless conversation. It became impossible to ignore, a constant weight at the edge of his thoughts. Until one day, he stopped trying to ignore it. He followed it. The deeper parts of Mary Geois were not meant to be seen. Even among the celestial dragons, there were limits. Corridors that led nowhere. Doors that remained sealed for generations. Guards who said nothing but whose presence alone was enough to turn others away. Luffy walked past them all. There was no fear in him, only certainty. As if he had always known where he was going. The path ended at a gate. It stood alone in a forgotten corridor, larger than anything around it, its surface covered in markings too ancient to understand. They seemed to shift when he looked at them, like something alive trapped beneath the surface. This was a boundary. Something had been sealed here. Something no one was meant to reach. Luffy placed his hand against the gate. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, it opened. What lay beyond was not a room. It was an absence. There were no walls, no floor, no ceiling. Only darkness stretching endlessly in every direction. Not empty darkness, but something deeper, something that felt as though it existed before the world itself. At the center of it all was a void. It did not move, yet everything seemed to revolve around it. It did not speak, yet its presence filled the space completely. This was the abyss. Luffy stepped forward. Each movement felt heavier than the last, as if the space itself was aware of him. The closer he came, the more the silence pressed in, until even his thoughts felt distant. Then it happened. A voice, not heard but understood. You found me. Luffy did not hesitate. I was looking for you. There was no fear in his voice. No doubt. Only curiosity. And something else. Recognition. The abyss responded. Not with words, but with acceptance. When Luffy reached out and touched it, the world changed. There was no explosion of light, no visible transformation. Instead, everything happened within him. Knowledge flooded his mind, vast and overwhelming, yet perfectly clear. He understood things he had never learned, saw truths that had been hidden from history itself. Power flowed through him, not wild or uncontrollable, but precise. Perfect. When he returned to Mary Geois, nothing appeared different. But everything had changed. At first, the power was subtle. Shadows moved when he willed them to. Space itself bent slightly, distances shrinking in ways no one else could perceive. He could feel the presence of others without seeing them, sense intentions before they were acted upon. It was not something he struggled to control. It was something he simply understood. As time passed, that understanding deepened. He began to open circles in the air, dark and shifting, pulling objects from nothingness. Weapons formed at his command, shaped from the abyss itself. He stepped into shadows and emerged elsewhere, as though distance had ceased to exist. No one saw. No one knew. But beneath Mary Geois, something was growing. The first true change came with his transformation. It was not intentional. It did not need to be. One moment, he stood as he always had. The next, his body expanded, shadows consuming his form as something far greater took shape. A towering figure, vast and undefined, with a presence that seemed to distort the space around it. A tail formed, sharp and bladed. A mouth opened, too large, too unnatural, capable of swallowing anything that came near. It was not human. It was not meant to be. And yet, Luffy remained at its center. Unchanged. He did not resist it. He accepted it. Above, in the highest chamber of the world, the balance began to shift. The 5 elders felt it first. An unease that could not be explained, a distortion beneath their feet that should not have existed. They gathered in silence, each aware that something had changed. At the center of the chamber, seated upon the throne that was never meant to be occupied, was Ainu. For centuries, nothing had threatened that position. Nothing had even come close. Until now. Far below, Luffy stood in the darkness once more. The abyss no longer felt distant. It felt like part of him. He looked upward, though there was nothing to see. Not with his eyes. But with something deeper. For the first time, he understood the truth. Mary Geois was not the top of the world. It was only the surface. And above even it, there was a throne. Luffy smiled. Then I'll take it. In that moment, something irreversible was set into motion. Not a rebellion. Not a dream. But a decision. And somewhere far above him, beyond the reach of anyone else. Ainu opened their eyes. Chapter 2, The Night the World Was Silenced. The holy land of Mary Geois had always been quiet. Not peaceful. Never peaceful, but controlled. Every movement, every word, every life beneath it existed within an order that had remained unbroken for centuries. That night, for the first time, that order began to collapse. The summons came without warning. A message carried through unseen channels, reaching only one person. Monkey D. Luffy. Report to the Chamber of Authority. There was no signature. There didn't need to be. At the top of the world, there was only one authority that mattered. Luffy stood in silence for a moment after reading it. Then he smiled. Not the carefree smile of a child. Something quieter. Colder. So they noticed. The walk to the chamber was long, but he didn't rush. Guards lined the halls, their presence heavier than usual. Even the celestial dragon seemed different, their voices lower, their movements uncertain. Something had spread through Mary Geois. Not panic. Not yet. But awareness. They could feel it. Even if they didn't understand it. The doors to the chamber opened before him. Massive. Ancient. Unmoving for years until now. As he stepped inside, the air changed. Heavier. Sharper. Watching. At the center stood the 5 elders. 5 figures, each carrying an unnatural stillness, as if time itself moved differently around them. Their eyes were fixed on Luffy the moment he entered. Behind them, elevated above everything else, was the throne. And seated upon it was Ainu. For most of the world, this figure did not exist. For those who knew, this was the true ruler of everything. Luffy stopped walking. For the first time in his life, he was standing at the highest point of power. And he did not bow. Silence filled the chamber. Heavy. Unforgiving. You've changed, one of the elders said. Luffy tilted his head slightly. Have I? Another stepped forward. There is a presence within you. Something that does not belong in this world. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shadows at Luffy's feet shifted. Just slightly. But it was enough. The chamber darkened. I found something, Luffy said calmly. The elders did not move. But their attention sharpened. You were not meant to find anything, one replied. Luffy's smile returned. Then maybe you shouldn't have hidden it. The ground cracked. It wasn't from force. Not yet. It was as if reality itself had taken a step back. Black circles began to form around Luffy, hovering in the air, rotating slowly. The same abyssal energy he had nurtured in secret now revealed itself fully, no longer contained. The temperature dropped. The light dimmed. And something far older than the chamber itself began to surface. The abyss, one of the elders whispered. For the first time. There was uncertainty in their voices. You've seen it, Luffy said. No answer came. They didn't need to give one. That was enough. The first elder moved. Faster than any human could perceive, his form shifting into something monstrous, ancient power erupting from his body. The others followed instantly, their transformations tearing through the stillness of the room. They were no longer men. They were something else entirely. Luffy didn't move. The attack came from all sides. And disappeared. The moment it reached him, the abyss reacted. The shadows expanded, forming a barrier that didn't block the attack. It consumed it. Silence. Then, Luffy stepped forward. Everything changed. His body began to shift, just as it had in the depths below. Shadows wrapped around him, stretching, expanding, reshaping his form into something far greater than human. A towering figure emerged. Dark. Massive. Unrecognizable. The chamber trembled. One of the elders lunged again, claws tearing through the air. This time, Luffy responded. A single motion. A blade formed from nothing, summoned through a black circle that appeared beside him. It moved without hesitation, cutting through the elder's form. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the elder's body split. Regeneration began instantly. But it didn't complete. The abyss had already taken hold. What have you done? Another elder demanded. Luffy looked at them. Not with anger. Not with hatred. But with understanding. You built a world on control, he said. Another step forward. I just perfected it. The fight that followed was not a battle. It was an execution. Each elder attacked with everything they had. Ancient strength. Regenerative bodies. Power that had ruled the world for centuries. None of it mattered. The abyss adapted. Consumed. Overwhelmed. One by one. They fell. Until only one remained. The chamber fell silent again. But this time, it was different. Heavier. Final. At the top of the chamber, Ainu rose from the throne. For the first time, the ruler of the world moved. "You were not meant to exist," Ainu said. The voice carried something beyond authority. Something ancient. Something absolute. Luffy returned to his normal form. Standing alone. Looking up at the throne. Neither were you. The space between them distorted. Ainu moved first. The world seemed to bend around them, reality itself responding to their presence. Power unlike anything Luffy had faced before filled the chamber, pressing down from every direction. This was not the elders. This was something beyond them. And for the first time, Luffy felt it. Excitement. The abyss reacted instantly, expanding, pushing back against Ainu's power. The two forces collided without touching, warping the space between them. "Good," Luffy said quietly. Then he stepped forward. The final battle had begun. Far below, the world continued as it always had. Unaware. Unchanged. But above it, everything was about to end. And when it did, only one would remain. Chapter 3, The Empty Throne No More. The chamber no longer felt like a place within Mary Geois. It had become something else. Something unstable. The air bent unnaturally, as if space itself could no longer hold its shape. The walls that had stood for centuries began to crack, not from impact, but from pressure. Two forces existed within the same space that were never meant to meet. At the center of it all stood Monkey D. Luffy. And before him, Ainu. For a moment, neither moved. There was no need for words. No need for threats. Both of them already understood. Only one would leave. Ainu stepped forward. The movement was small. But the effect was not. The ground beneath Luffy collapsed inward, folding like paper as if gravity itself had been rewritten. The air compressed, invisible force crashing down from all directions, aiming to crush him instantly. Luffy did not move. The shadows around him reacted. Abyssal energy surged outward, forming a distortion that swallowed the force before it could reach him. The pressure vanished, consumed without resistance, leaving only silence in its place. Ainu's gaze sharpened. "You adapt quickly," Ainu said. Luffy smiled faintly. "I don't adapt." Another step forward. "I understand." The space between them shattered. Ainu vanished. And reappeared directly in front of Luffy. The strike came without warning. A force beyond physical strength, something that bypassed distance entirely. It collided with Luffy's body. And passed through him. For a split second, Luffy's form dissolved into shadow. Then reformed. The abyss had already learned. Behind Ainu, a circle opened. Dark. Endless. Chains erupted from it. They wrapped around Ainu instantly, pulling tight, attempting to bind something that had never been restrained before. The chains weren't physical, they were constructs of the abyss itself, designed to hold not the body, but the existence within it. For the first time, Ainu stopped moving. The chamber trembled. "You think you can control me?" Ainu asked. The voice did not rise. But the world responded. The chains shattered. Not broken. Erased. Luffy's expression didn't change. "Not control," he said. More circles appeared. Hundreds of them. Surrounding the entire chamber. Replace. From each circle, weapons emerged. Blades. Spears. Forms that didn't belong to any known design. They hovered in silence, all pointed toward a single target. Ainu raised a hand. Everything froze. The weapon stopped mid-air. The shadows halted. Even the movement of the abyss itself slowed. Time. It had been seized. Ainu walked forward. Each step deliberate, unaffected by the frozen world around them. The distance between them disappeared slowly, as if Luffy had already lost before he realized it. "You have power," Ainu said. They stopped just in front of him. "But power alone does not make you king." A hand reached toward Luffy's chest and passed through. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, everything moved again. The hand that should have struck him was gone. Ainu stood where they had been. But something had changed. A shadow moved across their body. Subtle. But wrong. Luffy's voice came from behind them. "You're not the only one who can control what exists and what doesn't." Ainu turned. For the first time, there was a pause. Luffy stood there, one hand raised slightly, fingers curling as if holding something invisible. The abyss had reached deeper. Not just around Ainu. Into them. The space inside Ainu's body distorted, shadows spreading beneath the surface like cracks forming through glass. The control they held over the world, over existence itself, was being challenged at its core. Ainu began. But the word never finished. The chamber darkened completely. Not from absence of light, but from something consuming it. Luffy stepped forward one final time. "I told you," he said quietly. "I understand." The abyss surged. Ainu's form collapsed inward, pulled into a vortex that had no center, no edge, no escape. Their power resisted, pushing back with everything it had ruled the world with for centuries. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. The void closed. And Ainu was gone. Silence. Complete. The chamber stopped shaking. The air settled. The world, for the first time in centuries, stood without its ruler. Luffy stood alone. Slowly, he turned. The throne stood before him. Empty. For a moment, he simply looked at it. Not with awe. Not with hesitation. With certainty. He walked forward. Each step echoing through the chamber that no longer belonged to the past. And then, he Saturday. The moment he did, something changed. Not just in Mary Geois. Everywhere. Across the seas, the air shifted. Deep beneath the oceans, currents altered course. In distant lands, people paused without knowing why. The world felt it. A presence. Not hidden. Not distant. Watching. Controlling. Becoming absolute. Within the chamber, the shadows moved again. But now, they did not surround Luffy. They obeyed him. Knowledge flowed through him instantly. Everything the previous ruler had known. Every secret. Every weapon. The Mother Flame. The ancient weapon it powered. The ability to erase entire islands from existence. And something more. Contracts. Invisible threads that connected power to obedience. The ability to control minds, to bind others to his will. Not through fear, but through something deeper. The abyss expanded. And with it, so did his control. High above the world. For the first time in history, the empty throne was no longer empty. And the one who sat upon it was no longer just a boy. Monkey D. Luffy had become Inu. The world had not yet realized it. But it would. Soon. Because this was not the end. This was the beginning of something far worse. A world without freedom. A world without resistance. A world under one will. His. And far away, beyond the reach of Mary Geois. Something stirred. As if the world itself refused to accept what had just happened. The first spark of rebellion had already begun. Chapter 4: The Demon Lords of Earth. The world did not change overnight. It couldn't. Not yet. Across the seas, kingdoms still stood. Pirates still sailed. The sky remained unchanged. To those living below, nothing had happened. But high above them, within Mary Geois, everything had already changed. Seated upon the throne, Monkey D. Luffy remained still. The chamber was silent. Empty. The 5 elders were gone. Ainu was gone. The system that had ruled the world for centuries had ended in a single night. But power like that could not remain unstructured. Not if it was to control everything. Luffy rested his head against his hand, his expression calm as knowledge flowed endlessly through him. Memories that were not his. Secrets buried for centuries. Names. Weapons. Bloodlines. And systems. The 5 elders. They had not been rulers. They had been extensions. Servants elevated beyond humanity. Bound not by loyalty, but by control. Luffy's gaze darkened slightly. They were flawed. Not in strength, but in purpose. They served the throne, but they did not embody it. Luffy stood. The shadows around him shifted instantly, responding without hesitation. I don't need elders. His voice echoed through the empty chamber. I need something greater. The abyss stirred. Something new began to take form within his thoughts. A new order. The idea did not come as a thought. It arrived as certainty. The world did not need hidden rulers. It needed undeniable power. Luffy raised his hand slightly. Dark circles formed in the air around him, rotating slowly. They will not be elders. The shadows deepened. They will be. The circles expanded. Demon Lords. The Demon Lords of Earth. The name settled into reality itself. Not symbolic. Not temporary. Absolute. These would not be advisors. They would not stand behind power. They would represent it. Immortal. Bound. Unquestionable. Luffy lowered his hand. Now he needed to choose them. The names that stood above the rest. The world spoke constantly. Through ambition. Through violence. Through survival. And now, Luffy could hear all of it. Pirates rising through chaos. Warriors breaking systems. Men who refused control. Among them, 2 stood out. Not because they ruled, but because they could not be ruled. Portgas D's Lace. And Sabo. In this timeline, they had never been separated. They had built their own path together. A crew not defined by the world, but by their own will. They did not follow power. They challenged it. Luffy's eyes opened. Then I will make them mine. The meeting. Far across the sea, a ship cut through the water. No government flag. No allegiance. Only movement. Ace stood at the front, arms crossed, fire flickering naturally around him. Sabo stood nearby, watching the horizon, calm and focused. They were not searching for anything. But something had already found them. The air shifted. Without warning, a circle opened above the ship. Dark. Silent. Watching. The crew froze. Ace stepped forward immediately, flames igniting across his arm. Whatever comes out of that. He stopped. Because something already had. Monkey D. Luffy stepped out of the void. The moment he landed on the deck, everything changed. The wind slowed. The sea quieted. Even the fire around Ace weakened for a moment. Sabo's expression sharpened. You're not normal. Luffy looked at both of them. I didn't come to fight. Ace didn't lower his guard. Then you picked the wrong way to introduce yourself. Luffy took a step forward. I came to offer you something. Silence followed. Sabo spoke first. What kind of offer? Luffy's gaze deepened. Power. A pause. Immortality. Another pause. Authority over the world itself. Ace let out a short laugh. Sounds like control to me. Luffy shook his head slightly. No. The shadows beneath him moved. Something more permanent. The contract. A circle formed between them. Large. Dark. Ancient. Symbols filled its surface, shifting slowly as if alive. This is a contract, Luffy said. Sabo studied it carefully. And the cost? Luffy answered without hesitation. You serve me. The sea fell silent. Ace looked at Sabo. Sabo met his gaze. They both understood. This was not a normal decision. This was a point of no return. Ace stepped forward. And if we refuse? Luffy's expression did not change. You won't. Not as a threat. As certainty. Because deep down, they could already feel it. This power was beyond anything they had ever known. And it was being offered to them. Ace exhaled slowly. Fine. Sabo closed his eyes briefly. You never hesitate, do you? But he stepped forward as well. I'm in. The ascension. The moment their hands touched the circle, it activated. Darkness surged upward, surrounding them completely. Their bodies did not break. They did not resist. They changed. Power entered them without limit. Their lifespan stretched beyond time. Their strength rose beyond what they had once believed possible. And within them, the contract sealed. Luffy watched as the transformation completed. Then he spoke. From this moment, the shadows calmed. You are no longer just men of the sea. A pause. You are the demon lords of Earth. The world did not hear it. Not yet. But it would. Because something new had just been created. And it would not remain hidden for long. Chapter 5, The World Begins to Break. The sea did not move. Not because the wind had stopped. But because something greater had taken hold of it. The ship remained still, surrounded by silence that did not belong to nature. At the center of that silence stood Monkey D. Luffy. Before him, two men were being rewritten. Port Gas D. Ace stood unmoving, flames no longer flickering but burning with a deeper intensity. His fire had changed. It was no longer wild. It no longer spread without control. It listened. Beside him, Sabo remained surrounded by darkness. But something was wrong. The abyss did not react to him the same way. Ace had been simple. Fire answered fire. Destruction embraced destruction. But Sabo was different. The shadows wrapped around him, pressing inward as if searching for something deeper within him. His body trembled, not from pain, but from resistance. Not rejection. Conflict. Luffy watched closely. You're not like him, he said quietly. The abyss responded. The darkness around Sabo shifted. Changed. Then, it froze. A thin layer of frost formed across the shadows. At first, it was small. Barely visible. Then it spread. The darkness itself began to crystallize, turning into something solid, something cold, something absolute. Sabo's eyes snapped open. A breath escaped him. White. Frozen. What is this? The power inside him was not burning. It was silencing. Where Ace's flames consumed everything. Sabo's presence erased movement itself. The air around him dropped in temperature instantly. The deck beneath his feet cracked as ice spread outward in jagged lines. The abyss had not given him fire. It had given him the opposite. The rewriting of power. Luffy stepped forward. This is your nature, he said. Sabo looked at his hand. Ice formed around it, not slowly, but instantly. A perfect structure, sharp and controlled, forming without effort. I didn't have this before. Luffy shook his head slightly. No. The shadows moved behind him. You always did. A pause. You just never reached it. The abyss had not created something new. It had revealed something hidden. Sabo clenched his hand. The ice shattered outward, not breaking, but expanding, reshaping into something larger. A wave of frozen air pushed across the ship, stopping just short of the crew. They couldn't move. Not from fear, but because the air itself felt heavy. Still. Controlled. Sabo exhaled slowly. This isn't just power. Luffy nodded. It's authority. Fire and ice. Ace stepped forward, flames rising again. But now they were different. They didn't spread wildly. They didn't burn uncontrollably. They condensed. Focused. The fire gathered in his hand, burning hotter than before, but tighter, sharper, as if every part of it was being directed with precision. Ace glanced at Sabo. So you're ice now? Sabo looked back at him. Looks like it. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ace smirked. Good. He raised his hand slightly. Flames surged upward. Would have been boring if we had the same thing. Sabo almost smiled. Ice formed again in his palm. Yeah. Fire and ice. Opposites. Balanced. But both. Under one will. The first demon lords. Luffy turned away from them, his cloak shifting as the abyss responded to his movement. It's done. The contract had fully settled. Ace stood taller now. Not just stronger. Different. Sabo's presence had changed completely. Calmer. Colder. Both of them had crossed something. A line that could not be uncrossed. You feel it, don't you? Luffy said. Ace didn't answer immediately. Yeah. Sabo closed his eyes briefly. It's everywhere. The world. They could feel it now. Not just the sea beneath them. But everything. Movements. Presence. Power. And above it all. Him. The world reacts. Far away, across the ocean. A man stood on the deck of another ship. Monkey D. Dragon. The wind around him stopped. For the first time in years. His expression changed. Sabo. Something had happened. Something unnatural. Something irreversible. And it wasn't just Sabo. There was something else. Something above even that. Dragon looked toward the sky. What have you become? The declaration. Back on the ship, Luffy faced Ace and Sabo once more. This world is broken, he said. Neither of them disagreed. It always has been. Luffy's gaze sharpened. I'm going to control it. Silence followed. Not shock. Not rejection. Understanding. Ace crossed his arms. And us? Luffy answered without hesitation. You stand at the top with me. Sabo looked out at the sea. Demon Lords. The title no longer felt distant. It felt real. Permanent. Luffy raised his hand. A circle opened once more. Come. The abyss called. And this time. They followed willingly. Chapter 6, The World Hears His Name. The world had lived in silence for centuries. Not peaceful silence. Controlled silence. At the heart of that control stood the Marines. Within the towering stronghold of Marineford, something unprecedented was being prepared. Den Mushi lined the walls. Transponders connected across every sea. Every island. Every nation. A global broadcast. Marines gathered in formation below the execution platform. Some stood firm. Others shifted uneasily. Because something felt wrong. They had not been told everything. Only that a new order was being announced. At the center of the platform stood a high-ranking Marine officer. His voice steady, but his eyes uncertain. "This is a global transmission," he began. Across the world, people stopped. Pirates paused mid-sail. Kings turned toward their screens. Revolutionaries listened in silence. Even the seas seemed to wait. "We are here to announce a change in the structure of power." Murmur spread across Marineford. The system that once governed this world. A pause. Has been replaced. Silence fell. And then. They are known as the Demon Lords of Earth. The words echoed across the world. At that moment, two figures stepped forward. Portgas D's Lace and Sōgyō. They walked onto the platform without hesitation. No fear. No uncertainty. Only presence. Ace stopped first. Flames ignited in his palm. But they were no longer wild. They burned with precision. Intensity far beyond what the world had ever seen. Sōgyō stepped beside him. The air around him dropped instantly. Frost spread across the platform, forming patterns that cracked the stone beneath their feet. Fire and ice. Opposites. Balanced. The Marine officer stepped back. They will now address the world. Ace looked out across the gathered Marines. Then beyond them. "You've all been living under something fake," he said. His voice carried through every den mushi. Power that hid behind titles. Sōgyō continued. "That era is over." The Marines shifted. Tension rising. "We are the new highest authority," Sōgyō said calmly. "Above the system you knew." Silence. Then. A voice from the ranks. "This is madness." A Marine stepped forward. Then another. Then several more. "You expect us to bow to pirates?" Weapons were raised. Ace sighed. "I was hoping someone would say that." Sōgyō didn't move. "Then watch carefully," he said. The first Marine charged. He didn't make it 3 steps. Fire erupted. Ace didn't swing. Didn't shout. Didn't move beyond lifting his hand. The Marine was gone. Not burned. Erased. Silence hit harder than any explosion. Another Marine rushed forward. This time. Ice. Sōgyō raised his hand slightly. The Marine froze instantly. No scream. No movement. Then. He shattered. The sound echoed across the platform. No one else moved. Weapons lowered. Not from orders. From understanding. Ace looked across the crowd. Anyone else? No one answered. Sōgyō stepped forward again. This is not a request. The frost spread further. It is reality. One by one. The Marines lowered themselves. Not fully kneeling. But enough. Loyalty. Not chosen. But accepted. The world watches. Across the seas, the reaction was immediate. On distant islands, people stared in disbelief. Pirates laughed nervously. Kings whispered behind closed doors. The world had just changed. And everyone had seen it happen. Shanks. Far from Marineford, aboard a silent ship. A man stood at the edge of the deck. Shanks. His expression was no longer calm. Luffy. He had felt it. Before the broadcast. Before the announcement. Something had shifted in the balance of the world. And now he knew what it was. You didn't just rise. His gaze hardened slightly. You replaced everything. The weapon awakens. High above the world. In Mary Geois, Monkey D. Luffy stood alone. His eyes were closed. But he was not resting. He was reaching. Through the world. Through the sea. Through existence itself. The weapon no longer existed outside him. It was him. The Mother Flame. The ancient force once used to erase entire islands. Now flowed through his body. He selected a target. Not important. Not powerful. Just present. An island. Far below, the people never saw it coming. There was no warning. No sound. Only light. A single moment. And then, nothing. The island vanished. Erased from existence. No remains. No trace. As if it had never existed at all. Back in Mary Geois, Luffy opened his eyes. No emotion. No hesitation. Only confirmation. It works. A new era. Back at Marineford. The broadcast ended. But its impact did not. The world had seen the demon lords. They had seen their power. They had seen what happened to those who resisted. And somewhere beyond all of it, a new force had taken control. Not hidden. Not distant. Absolute. The Straw Hat rises again. Far across the sea. Another ship sailed forward. At its front stood a swordsman. Roronoa Zoro. The straw hat rested on his head. Not as a symbol of dreams, but as a legacy passed down by Shanks. Behind him stood a new crew. Different, but united. Zoro looked toward the horizon. So this is the world now. His grip tightened on his swords. Then we'll cut through it. Chapter 7: The Ones Who Stand Against God. The world did not collapse. It adapted. Fear spread faster than destruction ever could. The broadcast from Marineford had reached every corner of the sea. The name Demon Lords had already taken root, whispered in fear, spoken in anger, accepted in silence. And above all of it, there was one truth no one could deny. The world now had a ruler. The man who watches the sky. Far out at sea, aboard a ship that moved without fear. Shanks stood still. The wind pushed against his cloak, but he did not react to it. His gaze was fixed on the horizon. "You've gone too far, Luffy." There was no anger in his voice. Only certainty. He had known Luffy. Not as a ruler. Not as a god. As a boy. But whatever sat on that throne now was not that boy anymore. Behind him, his crew remained silent. They could feel it too. That pressure in the world. That shift in balance. "We're moving," Shanks said. No hesitation. No doubt. Because if the world had changed, then so would he. The revolutionary flame. Somewhere far from the eyes of the Marines, a storm gathered. Monkey D. Dragon stood at its center. The wind around him moved violently, reacting to something deeper than weather. Sabo. He had felt it clearly now. Not just a change. A transformation. Something had taken his second-in-command and turned him into something else. But that wasn't the worst part. There was something above even that. Something watching. Something controlling. Dragon lifted his gaze. "I knew is gone." The realization settled heavily. And something worse has taken its place. The revolutionaries gathered behind him. "Prepare everything," Dragon said. His voice was calm. But final. "We are no longer fighting a system." A pause. "We are fighting a god." The demon lords descend. Back at Marineford. The air remained tense even after the broadcast had ended. Marines stood in silence. None dared speak. because they could still feel it. That presence. Then, a distortion. Two figures appeared. Not arriving by ship. Not walking through gates. They stepped out of darkness itself. Portgas Lace. And Sōgyō. The temperature shifted instantly. Fire flickered across Ace's body. Cold spread silently from Sōgyō's presence. They didn't speak at first. They didn't need to. The Marines lowered their heads instinctively. Not commanded. Not forced. Conditioned. Ace looked across them. Still feels weird, he muttered. Sōgyō glanced at him. You'll get used to it. But his tone suggested something else. Not comfort. Acceptance. They were no longer part of the world. They stood above it. The sword that refuses to bend. Far across the sea. A ship cut through the waves with purpose. At its front stood Roronoa Zoro. The straw hat rested firmly on his head. Not as decoration, but as a promise. Behind him, his crew stood ready. Different from before, but bound by the same thing. Will. Zoro's eyes remained forward. Demon Lords. The words carried no fear. Only challenge. They're strong. A pause. But they're not untouchable. His hand rested on his sword. They're just enemies at the top. The crew didn't question him. Because they understood. Zoro did not follow the world. He cut through it. The first collision. The sea grew still. Not naturally. Something was approaching. Zoro felt it first. Stop the ship. The crew reacted instantly. The water ahead distorted. Then, a circle opened. Dark. Endless. And from it, they stepped out. Ace. Sōgyō. The distance between them was not large. But it felt impossible to cross. Fire met steel. Ice met resolve. Neither side spoke immediately. Then, Ace grinned slightly. So you're the one wearing that hat now. Zoro didn't react. It's not yours to talk about. Sōgyō stepped forward slightly. You should turn back. His voice was calm. This isn't your fight. Zoro's grip tightened. Wrong. A step forward. This is exactly my fight. The air shifted. Three forces collided without moving. Ace's flames rose higher. Sōgyō's frost spread further. Zoro's presence sharpened. Cutting through both. For the first time since their transformation, Ace and Sōgyō felt it. Resistance. Real resistance. Ace's grin widened. Good. Sōgyō's expression remained calm. But his eyes sharpened. Then show us. Zoro drew his sword. Slowly. The sound cut through the silence. And in that moment, the world held its breath. The war begins. High above it all. In Mary Geois. Monkey D. Luffy opened his eyes. He had felt it. Not fear. Not rebellion. Challenge. A faint smile formed. So it starts. The shadows behind him moved. The abyss responded. Because for the first time since he took the throne, someone in the world had stepped forward. And refused to kneel. Chapter 8, The Blade Against Fire and Ice. The sea stood still. Not calm. Not peaceful. It was waiting. Between two ships, the air had become heavy, distorted by the presence of power that did not belong in the same space. On one side stood Roronoa Zoro, the straw hat resting on his head, his hand steady on the hilt of his blade. On the other, Portgas Lace. Sōgyō. Fire and ice. Destruction and control. For a moment, No one moved. Then, Zoro stepped forward. The deck beneath his feet cracked slightly from the pressure of his movement alone. "I'm not here to talk," he said. Ace smirked. "Good." Flames surged upward. Sabo raised his hand. The air froze instantly. Then don't. The first strike. Zoro vanished. Not in speed alone, but in presence. One moment he stood still. The next, he was already in front of them. His blade cut forward. Ace reacted first. Fire erupted from his arm, colliding directly with the strike. The impact shook the sea. Flames split apart under the force, but didn't vanish. They twisted, condensed, reformed instantly. "Not bad," Ace muttered. Behind him, ice spread. Sabo moved without sound. The moment Zoro's blade passed through Ace's flames, ice surged upward from below. Zoro twisted mid-motion. His second sword came down. The ice shattered instantly. But it didn't stop. It reformed. Faster. Sharper. Closing in from every direction. Control versus force. Zoro landed, sliding back slightly. The moment his feet touched the deck, ice covered it, trying to lock him in place. Zoro didn't hesitate. He stepped forward anyway. The ice cracked beneath him. Not broken. Forced. Sabo's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're cutting through it." Zoro didn't answer. Because he wasn't cutting the ice. He was cutting what controlled it. His presence alone began to push back against Sabo's power. For the first time, the ice slowed. The second collision. Ace moved again. Faster this time. His flames didn't spread outward. They compressed. Focused into a single point. Then, he struck. A concentrated blast of fire tore across the space between them. Zoro didn't dodge. He stepped into it. His blade came down. The fire split. Not deflected. Cut. The flames divided cleanly, passing around him instead of consuming him. Ace's expression changed slightly. "You're not normal either." Zoro lowered his blade. "Didn't say I was." The balance breaks. Sabo stepped forward again. This time, he didn't aim for the ground. He aimed for the air itself. The space around Zoro froze. Not visibly, but completely. Movement slowed. Sound faded. Even the sea beneath them seemed to hesitate. Zoro felt it immediately. "So this is your real power." Sabo didn't respond. Because this wasn't an attack. It was control. Absolute stillness. Zoro raised his blade. Slowly. Deliberately. Then, he cut. The air shattered. Not broken like glass, but forced apart. The stillness collapsed. Sabo stepped back slightly. For the first time since becoming a demon lord, he felt resistance. Three forces collide. Ace moved again. Sabo moved with him. Fire surged from one side. Ice closed in from the other. Zoro stood between them. Then he moved forward. Not away. Not defensive. Directly into both. His blades moved once. Then again. Fire split. Ice shattered. The force pushed him back slightly. But he didn't fall. The sea erupted around them. Waves crashing outward from the sheer pressure of the clash. For a moment, everything froze. Three forces. Equal. Colliding. The one who watches. High above the world. Within Mary Geois. Monkey D. Luffy watched. Not with eyes. but through everything. The sea. The air. The power itself. Interesting. His fingers moved slightly. Far below. The battle shifted. The interruption. The sky above the battlefield darkened. Not from clouds. From something deeper. A presence. All three of them felt it instantly. Ace stopped. Sabo froze. Zoro looked up. A circle opened in the sky. Larger than before. Deeper. Endless. And from it, a single drop of light fell. It didn't explode. It didn't strike. It erased. The sea beneath it vanished. Gone. Leaving a perfect void in the water itself. Silence. Ace stared at it. What was that? Sabo already knew. Him. Zoro's grip tightened. So that's the level we're dealing with. The truth revealed. The circle remained open. A voice echoed from it. Calm. Unshaken. Enough. The world itself seemed to respond to it. Fire dimmed. Ice slowed. Even Zoro's stance shifted slightly under the pressure. Monkey D. Luffy. I didn't send you there to play. Ace looked up. We weren't playing. Sabo remained silent. Zoro didn't look away. Then finish it. The voice faded. The circle closed. But the damage remained. The sea itself had been erased in front of them. Not destroyed. Removed. The line is drawn. Silence returned. But it was different now. Heavier. Real. Ace looked at Zoro again. You saw that? Zoro nodded. Yeah. A pause. Now I know who I have to cut. Sabo's eye sharpened. That won't be easy. Zoro adjusted his stance. Didn't expect it to be. The air tightened once more. Because now? This wasn't just a fight. It was a war. The sea moved again. But not naturally. The clash had not begun. And yet, the world already felt heavier. On one side stood Roronoa Zoro. Still. Focused. No swords in his hands. Only presence. On the other side, Portgas De Ace and Sabo stood together. Fire flickered. Ice formed. Three forces. One battlefield. This time, no one spoke. The beginning. Zoro moved first. Not fast. Not reckless. Deliberate. Each step cracked the surface of the water beneath him, as if the sea itself resisted his advance. Ace shifted slightly. Flames gathering in his hand. Sabo didn't move. But the air around him froze instantly. Zoro stopped just within their range. You're stronger than before, Ace said. Zoro didn't respond. But so are we. Zoro's eye sharpened. Good. A single word. Then. He disappeared. Impact. Zoro reappeared directly in front of them. His fist drove forward. Ace met it instantly. Fire collided with force. The impact exploded outward, sending waves crashing violently in every direction. But Zoro didn't stop. His second strike came immediately. Sabo intercepted it. Ice formed around his arm, blocking the blow. The force cracked it instantly. But it held long enough. Zoro was forced back slightly. Landing again. Balanced. Unshaken. The difference. Ace moved next. His flames didn't expand. They compressed. Then. He vanished. Reappearing beside Zoro. A punch launched forward, fire condensed into a single point. Zoro turned. Too late to fully dodge. The impact hit his side. The explosion sent him skidding across the water. But he didn't fall. Didn't break. He stopped himself. That all you've got? Ace grinned. Not even close. Control. Sabo raised his hand. The ocean beneath Zoro froze instantly. Not just the surface. Deep. The water locked in place, trapping movement itself. Zoro felt it immediately. His footing changed. Restricted. Sabo stepped forward slowly. You rely on movement, he said calmly. So I take it away. The ice spread further. Climbing. Locking. Zoro didn't move. Then. He stepped forward anyway. The ice shattered beneath him. Not broken. Forced apart. Sabo's eyes narrowed. You're pushing through it. Zoro looked directly at him. I don't stop. Pressure. Ace attacked again. This time from above. Fire rained down in controlled bursts. Zoro moved through them. Not dodging everything. Taking some hits. But closing the distance. Each step pushed harder. Each movement sharper. Then. He reached them. Close range. Zoro's fist drove into Ace's guard. The impact sent shockwaves through both of them. Sabo moved to intercept. Zoro turned instantly. His strike met Sabo's. Ice cracked. Force pushed back. For a moment. All three stood locked. Power against power. Then. Everything exploded outward. The first damage. Zoro was pushed back again. This time further. He landed harder. A slight cut formed along his shoulder. Blood. The first of the fight. Ace noticed. So you can bleed. Zoro wiped it away. So can you. The shift. Something changed. Not in strength. In intent. Ace's flames grew hotter. Sabo's ice spread wider. Zoro's stance lowered. More focused. More precise. Because now? They understood each other. This wasn't a test. This was real. Above it all. High above the world. Within Mary Geois. Monkey D. Luffy watched. Not impressed. Not disappointed. Interested. He's adapting. The abyss shifted behind him. Because something was becoming clear. Zoro wasn't just resisting. He was growing. Mid-fight. The declaration. Back on the battlefield. Zoro stepped forward again. Blood still visible. But his presence stronger. I see it now, he said. Ace raised an eyebrow. See what? Zoro looked between them. Your power. A pause. And its limits. Silence. Then. Ace smiled. Then prove it. Sabo's eye sharpened. If you can. Zoro stepped forward one more time. I will. The war escalates. The sea trembled. Because the next clash would not hold back. And far away, across the world, more eyes were turning toward this battle. Because something had begun. And it would not end quietly. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10. The Edge of Ascension. The sea no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a breaking point. Waves crashed violently around them, not from wind, not from storm. But from pressure. At the center of it stood Roronoa Zoro. Across from him. Portgas D. Ace and Sabo. Three forces. But no longer equal. Something was changing. The shift. Zoro stood still. Breathing steady. Blood trailing lightly down his arm. But his presence. had grown sharper. More focused. More dangerous. Ace felt it first. He's different now. Sabo didn't respond. But his eyes narrowed slightly. Because he felt it too. Zoro wasn't just fighting anymore. He was evolving. The Demon Lords unleashed. Ace stepped forward. No more holding back. Flames erupted instantly. Not outward. Upward. A pillar of fire shot into the sky, twisting, condensing, turning darker at its core. Heat surged across the battlefield. The sea below began to boil. Sabo raised his hand. Ice didn't spread this time. It formed. Condensed into sharp, controlled structures that hovered around him like weapons. The temperature dropped violently. Fire and ice no longer clashed. They coexisted. Balanced. Deadly. Zoro watched. So this is it. His stance lowered. Your full power. Ace smirked. Now you get it. Collision. They moved at the same time. Ace vanished into fire. Sabo into frost. Zoro stepped forward. Not reacting. Meeting them. The impact hit instantly. Fire exploded on one side. Ice shattered on the other. Zoro stood between them. Blocking both. His arms strained. His body pushed back slightly. But he didn't break. Limits. Ace struck again. Faster. Harder. Each blow carried more heat. More force. Zoro blocked. Dodged. Countered. But the pressure built. Sabo moved next. His control expanded. The air itself slowed. Zoro's movements became heavier. Delayed. For the first time. He couldn't move freely. A hit landed. Ice formed across his shoulder. Another. Fire struck his side. Zoro was forced back. Sliding across the water. Breathing heavier now. The line. Ace stopped advancing. This is where it ends. Sabo stood beside him. You've done enough. Zoro remained still. Head lowered slightly. Breathing slow. Then. He laughed. Quiet. But real. You're strong. He lifted his head. But not enough. Breaking point. Zoro stepped forward again. The ice beneath him shattered instantly. The pressure around him shifted. Something deeper awakened. Not power. Presence. A force that didn't push outward. But cut through everything. Ace felt it. What is this? Sabo's control faltered for a moment. The air moved again. Zoro's eye sharpened. This is my limit. A pause. Breaking. Ascension. The space around him distorted. Not like the abyss. Not like fire. Not like ice. Something else. Pure intent. Zoro stepped forward. And vanished. Not speed. Absence. He appeared behind them. Before they could react. He struck. One blow. Ace was sent crashing forward. Another. Sabo was driven downward into the sea. The impact shattered the surface completely. Water erupted upward. For the first time since becoming Demon Lords. They had been overpowered. Silence. Zoro stood alone again. Breathing heavier now. But standing. Ace rose slowly. Fire flickering. Now that's interesting. Sabo emerged from the water. Ice reforming instantly. So this is your answer. Zoro faced them. No. A pause. This is the beginning. Above all. High above. In Mary Geois. Monkey D. Luffy stood, watching. For the first time, his expression changed. Not curiosity. Recognition. So you reached it. The abyss behind him shifted. Because something had appeared in the world. Not equal. But close enough to matter. The war declared. Back on the battlefield. Ace stepped forward again. Sōgyō beside him. Both fully serious now. No more games, Ace said. Sōgyō nodded. We end this here. Zoro adjusted his stance. Try. The sea trembled again. Because this time, there would be no holding back. And far away, across the horizon, a ship approached. Silent. Watching. The battlefield did not calm. It tightened. The sea, already shattered by the clash, now trembled under something far greater. Roronoa Zoro stood firm. Across from him, Portgas D. Ace and Sōgyō remained ready. But none of them moved. Because something else had entered the fight. The arrival. The wind changed. Not gradually. Instantly. A presence spread across the sea, heavy, commanding, undeniable. The waves calmed. The sky darkened slightly. Even the fire around Ace flickered. Even the ice around Sōgyō slowed. Zoro's eyes shifted. So you finally showed up. From the horizon. A ship approached. No rush. No hesitation. Only certainty. Standing at its front. Shanks. His presence alone pressed against the battlefield. Not like the abyss. Not like fire or ice. Something different. Balanced. Controlled. Absolute. The interruption. The ship stopped just within range. Shanks stepped forward. No weapons drawn. No visible threat. Yet everything felt like it could break at any moment. That's far enough. His voice carried across the sea without effort. Ace smirked slightly. You picked a bad time to show up. Sōgyō remained silent. But his eye stayed fixed on Shanks. Because he understood immediately. This was not just another opponent. The weight of a king. Shanks stepped onto the water. It did not reject him. It held him. I'm not here for you, he said calmly. His gaze moved past them. To Zoro. So you're the one wearing that hat now. Zoro didn't flinch. Yeah. A pause. Got a problem with that? Shanks smiled faintly. Not yet. But his eyes shifted again. Toward Ace and Sōgyō. But them. The air grew heavier. I do. The Demon Lords vs an Emperor. Ace stepped forward. Flames rising again. You think you can stop us? Sōgyō moved beside him. Ice forming once more. This isn't your world anymore. Shanks didn't move. Didn't react. That's exactly why I'm here. The moment the words left his mouth, the pressure exploded outward. An invisible force slammed into everything. The sea cracked. The sky trembled. Zoro felt it. Ace felt it. Sōgyō felt it. For the first time since becoming Demon Lords, they were pushed back. Not physically, but in presence. The clash of kings. Ace attacked first. Fire surged forward. But this time, it didn't reach. Shanks raised his hand slightly. The flames split. Not burned. Not blocked. Forced apart. Ace's eyes narrowed. What was that? Sōgyō moved next. Ice surged outward, aiming to lock the space around Shanks. But it stopped. Before it could reach him. Frozen. In place. As if something refused to let it move forward. Shanks stepped through it. Unaffected. The difference. Zoro watched carefully. He's not stronger. A pause. He's above it. Shanks stopped moving. Now standing between all of them. I'm not here to fight all of you. His gaze shifted upward. Beyond the sky. I'm here because of him. The one above all. High above. Within Mary Geois. Monkey D. Luffy stood. Watching everything. Hearing everything. Feeling everything. Shanks. For the first time. There was something in his voice. Recognition. The message. Back on the battlefield. Shanks spoke again. This ends now. Ace laughed. You think you can just walk in and decide that? Sabo didn't laugh. Because he could feel it. This wasn't just confidence. It was certainty. The decision. Zoro stepped forward. You're not the enemy. Everyone looked at him. Even Shanks. Zoro's grip tightened slightly. He is. His gaze turned upward. Toward the sky. Toward something none of them could see directly. And I'm going to cut him down. Silence followed. Then. Shanks smiled. Good. The war changes. For the first time. The battlefield shifted. Not three sides. Not enemies. But something new. An understanding. Temporary. Fragile. But real. Ace exhaled slowly. So we're doing this now. Sabo's expression remained calm. Looks like it. Shanks stepped forward slightly. Then don't hold back. Above them all. In Mary Geois. Luffy smiled. Not amused. Not surprised. Satisfied. Good. The abyss behind him expanded. Because now? The world had finally begun to resist. And that was what he wanted. The sea did not move. Not because it was calm. But because it was being held in place. Every wave. Every current. Every breath of wind. Stopped. On the battlefield, Roronoa Zoro, Portgas D. Ace, Sabo, and Shanks all felt it at the same time. The shift. The presence. Something had entered the world. The sky opens. Above them. The sky cracked. Not split by lightning. Opened. A massive abyssal circle formed, larger than anything seen before. Its edges distorted reality itself, pulling light inward, bending the sky as if it no longer belonged to the world below. Silence fell completely. Even Ace's flames died down. Even Sabo's ice stopped forming. Zoro looked up. So this is it. Shanks didn't speak. Because he already knew. The descent. From the center of the circle. A figure stepped forward. Monkey D. Luffy. But not the Luffy any of them had known. His presence alone crushed the space around him. Shadows moved without command, circling him like living extensions of his will. His eyes held no hesitation, no uncertainty. Only control. The moment his feet touched the air, the sea below distorted. Not from impact. From existence itself reacting. Silence of a god. No one moved. Not because they couldn't. Because they understood. This was not an opponent. This was the source. Luffy looked at them. One by one. Zoro. Ace. Sabo. Shanks. So this is what you've become. His voice was calm. Too calm. Ace stepped forward anyway. Yeah. Flames reignited. We're not bowing to you. Sabo stood beside him. Ice forming again. We made that choice already. Zoro said nothing. But his stance tightened. Shanks stepped slightly ahead of them. Luffy. For the first time. Luffy's eyes shifted. Recognition. You came. The gap. Shanks didn't smile. I had to. A pause. Because this isn't you. Silence. Luffy tilted his head slightly. It is now. The abyss moved behind him. Expanding. Responding. The first move. Zoro stepped forward. No hesitation. No fear. His fist clenched. I'm ending this. He moved. Faster than before. Sharper than before. Everything he had reached. Everything he had become. Focused into one strike. He closed the distance instantly. And attacked. Contact. The moment his strike reached Luffy, it stopped. Not blocked. Not dodged. Stopped. Zoro's fist hovered inches away. Held in place. By nothing. Zoro's eyes widened slightly. What? Luffy didn't move. You can't reach me. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The space between them wasn't distance. It was difference. Absolute. Luffy raised his hand slightly. Zoro's body lifted. Not thrown. Controlled. Held in the air like something weightless. Ace reacted instantly. Let him go. Fire surged forward. And disappeared. Consumed before it reached him. Sabo followed. Ice shot forward. And shattered mid-air. Before contact. Shanks moved. Faster than all of them. He reached Luffy. And struck. The first real clash. This time. There was impact. The air exploded outward. The sea cracked beneath them. For the first time. Luffy moved. A single step back. Nothing more. But it was enough. Zoro dropped back to the surface. Free again. Recognition. Luffy looked at Shanks. So you can still reach me? Shanks lowered his arm slightly. Not enough. A pause. But I will. The truth. Luffy looked at all of them again. Calm. Unshaken. You don't understand what this is. The abyss expanded behind him. This world was already controlled. A step forward. I just made it absolute. Ace clenched his fists. That's not freedom. Luffy didn't respond immediately. Then. I don't care about freedom. Silence. Zoro stepped forward again. Then I'll force it back into the world. The war begins for real. The air tightened. Because now. There was no misunderstanding. No hesitation. No doubt. They were not fighting a system. They were not fighting rulers. They were fighting him. And above them all. The abyss opened wider. Because for the first time since taking the throne, Monkey D. Luffy had entered the battlefield. What if Luffy was IMU? Chapter 13: The King and the God. The world held its breath. The battlefield had changed. No longer scattered. No longer divided. Everything now revolved around two figures. Monkey D. Luffy. And Shanks. One stood above the world. The other stood against it. The silence before. No one moved. Not Roronoa Zoro. Not Portgas D. Lace. Not Sabo. Because they understood something now. This fight was not theirs. The first step. Shanks moved first. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just one step forward. The sea beneath him steadied. I didn't come here to kill you, he said. Luffy tilted his head slightly. You should have. A pause. Because I didn't come here to be saved. The abyss behind him pulsed. Clash. Shanks vanished. Not speed. Presence. He reappeared directly in front of Luffy. And struck. This time. Luffy didn't stop it. He met it. Their fists collided. The impact tore the sky apart. Clouds split. The sea exploded outward. Zoro was forced back. Ace and Sabo braced themselves. For the first time, two equal forces met. The difference. They separated instantly. Shanks landed smoothly. Luffy remained in the air. Unmoved. You've gotten stronger, Luffy said. Shanks didn't smile. So have you? A pause. But you lost something. Luffy's eyes narrowed slightly. No. The abyss surged. I gained everything. The second collision. Luffy moved. Faster than before. Faster than anyone watching could follow. He reached Shanks instantly. A strike aimed directly at him. Shanks blocked. Barely. The force pushed him back across the water, leaving a trail of destruction behind him. But he didn't fall. Pressure. Luffy raised his hand. The air collapsed. Gravity itself shifted. Everything pressed downward. Zoro dropped to one knee. Ace's flames dimmed. Sabo's ice cracked. Even Shanks slowed. This is your world now, Luffy said. Calm. Absolute. And I decide what happens in it. Resistance. Shanks stood up fully. Slowly. The pressure around him broke. Not shattered. Pushed back. No, he said. His voice steady. You just think you do. The air changed again. Not heavy. Sharp. Focused. The king's will. Something invisible spread outward from Shanks. Not the abyss. Not elemental. Something deeper. Presence. The sea steadied again. The pressure weakened. Luffy watched closely. So you still have it. Shanks stepped forward. I never lost it. The truth of the fight. They stood facing each other again. Not rushing. Not reacting. Understanding. Luffy had power. Unlimited. Unmatched. But Shanks had something else. Control without domination. Strength without corruption. Balance. The turning point. Luffy moved again. But this time, Shanks met him halfway. Their strikes collided again. Faster. Stronger. More precise. Each impact cracked the air. Each movement shifted the sea. This was no longer overwhelming power. This was skill. This was control. This was war. The Watchers. Behind them. Zoro watched carefully. He's holding him. Ace frowned slightly. Not for long. Sabo didn't speak. Because he saw it. Something deeper. Luffy wasn't losing. But he wasn't dominating anymore. Above all. High above the battlefield. The abyss expanded again. Reacting. Adapting. Because for the first time, it had found resistance. The line is drawn. They separated again. Both standing. Both unbroken. But now, the difference was clear. Luffy ruled the world. But Shanks could still fight him. End of chapter 13. The sea could no longer contain the fight. Every clash between Monkey D. Luffy and Shanks tore through the air like reality itself was being rewritten. The sky remained split. The ocean below churned violently. But neither of them stopped. Escalation. Luffy moved first. Not testing. Not holding back. His hand rose. And the world responded. A massive abyssal circle formed above the battlefield, far larger than before. Its edges distorted everything around it, pulling light inward, bending the sky into something unnatural. Shanks looked up. So this is it. Luffy's voice followed. I'm done waiting. The weapon within. The air changed instantly. Heat vanished. Sound disappeared. Everything became still. Not frozen. Removed. Luffy lowered his hand slowly. I'll show you what real control looks like. The circle above them began to glow. Not bright. Empty. Shanks' expression hardened. Everyone move. Zoro reacted first. Back. Roronoa Zoro grabbed one of his crew members, forcing them away. Ace clenched his fist. This feels wrong. Sabo didn't move. It's not an attack. A pause. It's erasure. Descent. From the circle above. A single beam fell. Silent. Unstoppable. Shanks moved instantly. Faster than before. He appeared directly beneath it. And raised his arm. Impact. The beam struck. For a moment. Nothing happened. Then. Everything broke. The sea vanished beneath the impact point. Not split. Not destroyed. Gone. A perfect void formed where the water once existed. Shanks held his ground. Barely. The force pressed against him, pushing downward with absolute weight. His arm trembled. For the first time. He was being overpowered. Resistance. Zoro watched. He's holding it. Ace stepped forward. We can't just stand here. Sabo's eye sharpened. If that hits fully. He didn't finish. Because they all understood. Nothing would remain. The choice. Zoro stepped forward. Then we don't let it land. Ace grinned slightly. Now you're talking. Sabo raised his hand. Ice formed instantly. Not spreading. Condensing. Focused. United front. For the first time. They moved together. Zoro launched forward. Ace followed. Sabo moved last. All three aimed at the same point. The beam. Collision of will. Zoro struck first. His fist collided with the edge of the beam. The impact cracked the space around it. Ace followed. Fire surged upward, meeting the beam directly. For a moment. It held. Sabo raised his hand. Ice surged upward. Not to freeze. To contain. The beam distorted. For the first time. It slowed. Above them. Luffy watched. Silent. Unmoved. So this is your answer. The abyss behind him expanded further. Because now. They weren't resisting individually. They were resisting together. The break. Shanks pushed forward. With everything he had. The beam cracked. Not shattered. But weakened. Just enough. Zoro shouted. Now. All three pushed at once. The beam split. Breaking apart into fragments of energy that dissolved before reaching the surface. Silence followed. The void beneath them slowly filled again as the sea returned. Aftermath. Everyone stood still. Breathing heavier. Even Shanks. He lowered his arm slowly. So that's your power. Luffy looked down at them. And that's yours. A pause. Then. He smiled. Not amused. Impressed. The turn. Zoro stepped forward again. "You're not untouchable." Ace stood beside him. "Not anymore." Seibo's voice followed. "Now we know." Shanks stepped forward last. "And now we end it." The final phase begins. The air shifted again. Because something had changed. Not in Luffy. But in them. They had seen his power. Survived it. And now. They were ready. Above them. The abyss expanded even further. Because the fight was no longer one-sided. It had become something else. A war between control and resistance. The sea had returned. But it no longer belonged to the world. What once moved naturally now shifted under pressure alone. Every wave, every current, bent around a single presence. Above them all stood Monkey D. Luffy. Unmoved. Unchallenged. Until now. The moment before. Below him, 4 figures stood. Shanks. Roronoa Zoro. Portgas D's Lace. Seibo. Not scattered. Not divided. United. For the first time since this war began. They stood as one force. Against him. The decision. Luffy looked down at them. Silent. Then. He exhaled slowly. "You've proven enough." The abyss behind him expanded violently. Not growing. Unleashing. "I won't hold back anymore." The world reacted instantly. The sky darkened completely. The sea stilled again. And something far deeper began to emerge. The transformation. Luffy's body changed. Not gradually. Instantly. Shadows consumed his form, stretching outward, expanding into something far beyond human shape. His presence multiplied, pressing against the battlefield like a force that could not be contained. A massive, shadowed entity formed. Eyes glowing. A bladed tail moving behind him. A form that did not belong to the world. The abyss itself had taken shape. Reaction. Zoro tightened his stance. "So this is your real form." Ace's flame surged instinctively. "Now we're getting serious." Seibo raised his hand. Ice forming rapidly. "Stay focused." Shanks stepped forward. No hesitation. Together. The assault. They moved at once. Zoro first. His speed cut through the air, closing the distance instantly. Ace followed. Fire condensed into a single devastating strike. Seibo moved last. Ice forming a controlled wave, shaping the battlefield itself. Shanks stepped forward. Leading the attack. Impact. All 4 struck at once. The abyss reacted. Not defensively. Aggressively. Shadows erupted outward, colliding with each of them simultaneously. Zoro's strike landed. But slowed. Ace's flames connected. But were absorbed. Seibo's ice formed. But shattered. Shanks broke through. His strike hit directly. Damage. For the first time. The abyss cracked. A visible fracture formed across Luffy's form. Small. But real. Silence. Everything stopped for a moment. Even Luffy. "So you can reach this too." His voice echoed from within the abyss itself. Retaliation. The response was instant. The shadows surged violently. Zoro was thrown back. Ace was forced downward. Seibo's ice collapsed instantly. Even Shanks was pushed back, sliding across the surface of the sea. Overwhelming. The abyss expanded further. Its form grew larger. Its presence heavier. "You don't understand," Luffy said. "This isn't power you can overcome." The tail lashed out. Zoro barely blocked. The impact sent him crashing across the water. Ace attacked again, only to be swallowed by Shadow and thrown back. Sabo tried to control the space, but the abyss erased his influence instantly. The edge. Shanks stood again, breathing heavier now. Then we cut through it. He moved forward again. Alone. The limit. The abyss focused on him. For the first time. Fully. You're the only one who matters here. Shanks didn't stop. Then come at me properly. Collision of final forces. They met. Directly. No distractions. No interference. Just them. The impact shattered everything around them. The sea split again. The sky cracked further. Zoro watched. He's going all in. Ace clenched his fists. Then we back him up. Sabo nodded. We don't stop now. The turning point. The battlefield was breaking. Not from destruction. From pressure. Because this fight had reached its limit. And something had to give. The battlefield had reached its limit. The sea no longer behaved like water. The sky no longer resembled the sky. Everything existed under one truth. The abyss. At its center stood Monkey D. Luffy, fully transformed, his presence crushing everything around him. And yet, they still stood. Shanks. Roronoa Zoro. Portgas D's Lace. Sabo. But not for long. The final push. Shanks drove forward. Every movement precise. Every strike carrying everything he had left. He broke through the abyss again. His attack landed. Another crack formed across Luffy's form. But this time, the abyss didn't pause. It adapted. Faster. Stronger. More violent. Target. The shadows shifted. Not outward. Focused. Locked. On two targets. Ace. Sabo. They felt it instantly. His choosing, Sabo said quietly. Ace stepped forward anyway. Then we don't run. Fire surged. Ice formed. They moved together. One last time. Sacrifice. Ace attacked first. A concentrated blast of fire shot forward, brighter than anything before. Sabo followed. Ice surged upward, reinforcing the attack, stabilizing it, pushing it further. For a moment, they broke through. The abyss split. A direct path. To Luffy. The response. Luffy didn't move. Pointless. The shadows collapsed inward. Then exploded outward. Faster than anything before. The attack was erased instantly. And before they could react, the abyss reached them. The end of Demon Lords. Ace was struck first. The shadows pierced through his flames as if they didn't exist. His body froze. Not burned. Not destroyed. Stopped. Hair. A faint smile. Guess this is it. The fire faded. And he was gone. No explosion. No remains. Erased. Sabo. Sabo moved immediately. Not to attack. To hold it back. Ice surged around him, forming a barrier stronger than anything he had created before. It shattered instantly. The abyss reached him. He didn't resist. At least. A pause. We made it this far. The shadows closed. And he disappeared. Silence. Stillness. For a moment. Everything stopped. No fire. No ice. Only the abyss. And those who remained. Reaction. Zoro stood still. His fists clenched. They're gone. No anger in his voice. Just fact. Shanks didn't respond immediately. His gaze remained forward. Yeah. A pause. They are. Retaliation. The abyss moved again. This time. Toward Shanks. Faster. More precise. No distraction. No hesitation. Interception. Before it could reach him, Zoro moved. Faster than before. He stepped in front of Shanks. And struck. His fist collided with the incoming shadow. And for the first time, it stopped. Impact. The force exploded outward. Zoro was pushed back. But he didn't fall. Didn't break. He held it. You're not taking anyone else. New alliance. Shanks stepped beside him. Not behind. Not ahead. Equal. Good. His voice steady. Because now it's just us. Two against God. They stood together. Zoro. Shanks. Facing the abyss. Facing Monkey D. Luffy. No more distractions. No more support. Only two men. Against something that ruled the world. Luffy. The abyss shifted. So this is what remains. A pause. Good. Because now, there would be no interference. No variables. Only outcome. Final stage. The air tightened. Because this fight had changed. Not a war. Not a battle. A conclusion. Zoro stepped forward. We finish this. Shanks nodded. Together. The sea no longer mattered. There were no waves. No wind. No sound beyond what they created. The world had narrowed down to one final truth. Two men. Against a god. At the center of it all stood Monkey D. Luffy, the abyss fully formed around him, vast and endless. Facing him. Shanks. Roronoa Zoro. No hesitation. No fear. Only resolve. The beginning of the end. Zoro moved first. Faster than ever before. His presence cut through the pressure of the abyss itself, forcing a path where none should exist. Shanks followed. Not behind. Beside him. Two forces moving as one. Synchronization. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Zoro struck low. Shanks struck high. A perfect combination. The abyss reacted. But too late. Both attacks landed. Impact. For the first time since his transformation, Luffy was pushed back. Not far. But enough. A crack spread across the abyss. Wider than before. Visible. Real. Recognition. Luffy looked at them. Silent. So this is your answer. His voice echoed deeper now. Less human. More something else. Retaliation. The abyss exploded outward. Violent. Uncontrolled. Zoro blocked. Barely. The force sent him crashing across the empty sea. Shanks held his ground longer. But even he was pushed back. Sliding. Breathing heavier now. The difference. Zoro stood again. Blood running down his arm. He's getting stronger. Shanks exhaled slowly. No. A pause. He's losing control. Instability. The abyss shifted again. But this time, it wasn't clean. The shadows moved unevenly. Distorted. Unstable. Luffy's form flickered slightly. For a split second. The boy underneath appeared. Then vanished again. The crack. Zoro saw it. There. Shanks nodded. That's our opening. Final plan. They stepped forward again. Slowly this time. Carefully. Because now, this wasn't about power. It was about precision. Luffy. The Abyss reacted violently. You think you can break this? The voice was different now. Led. Conflicted. The charge. Zoro moved. Straight toward him. No hesitation. No defense. Just one goal. Shanks followed. Matching him step for step. The final collision. The Abyss surged. Everything it had left. All of its power. Focused into one massive strike. Zoro didn't stop. Shanks didn't slow. They pushed through it. Breaking through the shadows. Forcing their way forward. Contact. They reached him. Zoro struck first. A direct hit to the core of the Abyss. Shanks followed. Striking the same point. Break. The Abyss cracked. Then. Shattered. Light broke through the darkness. The shadows collapsed inward. And for the first time, Luffy's real form was exposed. Silence. Everything stopped. The sea. The sky. The world. Luffy stood there. No abyss. No shadows. Just him. The moment. Zoro stood in front of him. Breathing heavily. It's over. Shanks stood beside him. Luffy. A long silence followed. Then. Luffy smiled. Not cold. Not distant. Familiar. Yeah. The fall. His body began to fade. Not violently. Not painfully. Slowly. Like something being released. Guess you win. Zoro didn't respond. Shanks closed his eyes briefly. END. The abyss disappeared completely. The sky cleared. The sea returned. And the world, finally, was free. The silence did not break immediately. The sea moved again. Slowly. Uncertainly. As if it, too, was relearning how to exist. Above it stood Roronoa, Zoro and Shanks. No enemy. No pressure. Only absence. The aftermath. Where the abyss had once dominated the sky. There was nothing. No distortion. No shadow. Just open air. Zoro lowered his head slightly. It's over. His voice carried no victory. No pride. Only certainty. Shanks didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the spot where Monkey D. Luffy had stood. Yeah. But his voice carried something else. Doubt. The world responds. For across the seas, everything began to change. At Marine Ford, Marines stood frozen. The pressure that had once defined their world was gone. Some fell to their knees. Others looked to the sky. It disappeared. No orders followed. No commands. For the first time, they were on their own. The fall of control. In Mary Geois. The throne stood empty. No shadows. No presence. The celestial dragons, once untouchable, now whispered among themselves. What do we do now? There was no answer. Because the one who controlled everything was gone. The revolution. Somewhere far away. The wind shifted again. Monkey D. Air Dragon stood in silence. He felt it instantly. It ended. The storm around him calmed. Or did it? Because something didn't feel right. Not wrong. Incomplete. The pirate who waited. Out at sea, aboard his ship, Shanks finally moved. He stepped closer to where Luffy had stood. Then stopped. You always did things your own way. A faint smile. Even at the end. Zoro turned slightly. You think he's still alive? Shanks didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked out at the horizon. I think something like that. A pause. Doesn't just disappear. The new world. Days passed. The world began to rebuild itself. Without control. Without fear. Pirates sailed again. Not hunted. Not ruled. Kingdoms made their own choices. The Marines fractured. Some stayed. Some left. The system that had defined the world was gone. The straw hat. On the deck of his ship, Zoro stood alone. The straw hat rested in his hand. Not as a symbol of a dream, but as a reminder. You went too far. A quiet breath. But I'll make sure it meant something. He placed the hat back on his head. The final truth. High above the world. Beyond sight. Beyond reach. Something remained. Not whole. Not complete. But present. A faint trace of darkness. A whisper of the abyss. And within it, a voice. Not yet. End of chapter 18. The world had moved on. But the war had not truly ended. Days passed since the fall of Monkey D. Luffy. The seas calmed. The skies cleared. The pressure that once crushed the world had vanished. But something remained. The uneasy peace. On the deck of his ship, Roronoa Zoro stood alone. The straw hat rested on his head. The wind moved normally again. The sea felt alive again. But Zoro's expression didn't change. It's too quiet. Behind him, his crew worked, spoke, lived. But even they could feel it. Something was off. The man who knew. Not far away, aboard another ship. Shanks stared at the horizon. You feel it too. It wasn't a question. Zoro stepped beside him. Yeah. A pause. He's not gone. Shanks didn't respond immediately. Because he already knew. The remnant. High above the world. Beyond sight. Beyond reach. The abyss still existed. Not whole. Not powerful. But alive. A fragment. And within it, a pulse. Weak. Faint. But growing. Still not enough. The voice was distant. Broken. But real. The return begins. Back at sea. Zoro's hand tightened slightly. It's coming back. Shanks nodded. Slowly. A pause. But stronger. The truth they couldn't escape. They had won the battle. But not the war. Because something like the abyss didn't just disappear. It waited. It adapted. It returned. The new goal. Zoro turned fully toward the horizon. Then we don't wait. Shanks smirked slightly. Now you're thinking like him. Zoro didn't respond. No. A pause. I'm thinking about ending this. The final journey. The ship turned. Not drifting. Moving with purpose. Toward something unseen. Toward something unfinished. The last shot. High above. The darkness pulsed again. Stronger this time. The shape of something familiar beginning to form within it. A figure. A will. A presence that refused to disappear. Next time. A faint echo. I won't lose. Chapter 20, The Final Dawn. The world did not announce its end. It revealed it. The sky began to change. Not violently. Not suddenly. But inevitably. Across every sea, every island, every horizon. Darkness returned. Not as a storm. As something deeper. Above the world. The fragment of the abyss expanded. No longer weak. No longer fading. Reforming. Piece by piece. Until a shape emerged. A presence. A will that refused to die. Monkey D. Luffy. Not whole. But not broken anymore. This time. His voice echoed faintly through the sky itself. I finish it. At Marine Ford, Marines froze. It's back. Fear returned faster than before. Because this time, they knew what it was. In Mary Geois, the empty throne trembled, as if it recognized its ruler. Out at sea, Zoro didn't hesitate. There it is. The sky above twisted again. Shanks stepped forward beside him. Stronger than before. Zoro nodded. Good. A pause. Then we end it properly. A circle formed above them. Not Luffy's. Theirs. A force of will. A path upward. Zoro stepped into it. Shanks followed. The sea vanished beneath them. The sky opened. And for the final time, they rose. There was no sea. No land. Only space. Distorted. Endless. And at its center, Luffy. Waiting. They stood before him. Zoro. Shanks. Facing him again. No hesitation this time. No questions. Only truth. Luffy. He looked at them. Not cold. Not distant. Certain. You came back. Zoro stepped forward. So did you. A pause. Let's finish it. No build-up. No delay. They moved instantly. Zoro struck. Shanks followed. Luffy answered. The collision tore through existence itself. No sea. No sky. Only force. Only will. This wasn't strength anymore. It wasn't ability. It was something deeper. Three wills colliding at once. Control. Freedom. Balance. In that moment, everything slowed. A single opening. A single chance. Zoro saw it. Shanks saw it. They moved together. One final strike. Everything they had. Everything they were. Focused into one point. The attack landed. Not on the abyss. On him. Luffy's real form. The world went silent. Completely. The abyss didn't shatter this time. It dissolved. Not forced. Released. Luffy stood there. Still. Breathing. Alive. But no longer consumed. He looked at them. Zoro. Shanks. A small smile. Guess. A pause. This is how it ends. Zoro didn't respond. Shanks lowered his head slightly. Yeah. The dawn. The darkness faded completely. The sky returned. The world stabilized. And for the first time since it all began, there was nothing controlling it. Nothing watching it. Nothing above it. Zoro turned away. The straw hat resting firmly on his head. Shanks followed. Neither looked back. Because they didn't need to. The war was over. For real this time. Final end.
nothing can break me.